We can now bring in Paul Smith, Associate Professor and Head of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Nottingham. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Do we know what the president is likely to do, given that it looks like this government has its days numbered now?
We don't really know, no. There are several names that are doing the rounds. There are figures within Macron's majority, one or two names, Sébastien Lecornu, and also Gérald Darmanin has been mooted as a possible replacement. The alternative, as Clovis very rightly said, is to pick someone from the left. And certainly the Socialists are saying that a condition of their support would be for that person to be somebody from the Socialist Party, but there might be, and I stress the word might, there might be a candidate who is not in the currently in the Parti Socialiste, but has a left-wing tradition, sort of from the centre left. But we're really looking at the possibility of extending what in French they call the common sort of frame, if you like, the socle. That's actually the base, the plinth, as it were, the Republican base, and extending it again, as Clovis said, from the Socialists and possibly as far left as the Ecologists and the Communists, all the way to some of Les Républicains. The attitude of the right-wing Les Républicains will be very interesting. They've been given a free vote, but it's really a question of how the vote looks today and then where Macron thinks he can go.
At the heart of this current crisis, of course, that upcoming budget for next year, the French Prime Minister was seeking to shave 44 billion euros in public spending. Has any political party, in your opinion, come up with an alternative for how to tackle this country's ballooning deficit?
Well, the Socialists have actually come up with an alternative budget. They're not talking about shaving 44 billion. They think that they can reduce the deficit by about 30 billion. And of course, the emphasis there on the left. So you would expect them to be talking about higher taxes on higher earners. That's really, the nub and the gist of the argument is really where the problem lies and why France has this big deficit. If you're on the left, you think it's because Macron has made too many concessions to the wealthy. And if you're on the right, it's because the welfare budget is too high. And so you've got this, basically what you've got is this big argument going on in the middle of French politics about exactly how we resolve the problem of the French deficit. But the Socialists have come up with an alternative, and they will be pressing very firmly the case for their alternative budget to be looked at. Now, that would then cause other problems. Le Pen has said, and there is some nuance here, Le Pen has said that she would, in due course, vote a motion or put down a motion of censure against anybody from the Socialist Party leading the government. But there is still some negotiation to be done, not necessarily with her, but with the other parties.
The National Rally, as you know, has been called, as Clovis said as well, is calling for new legislative elections. Is this something that the president may consider, given that Emmanuel Macron is a lame duck currently, and whatever happens, he's likely to end up a lame duck?
Well, I think it's unlikely immediately because although he's had 2 weeks to think about who to replace with, it really depends how the vote goes today and what the lie of the land is. I think it's unlikely that there would be fresh elections, and the National Rally says it does, and sometimes it says it doesn't want a dissolution, and that would cause its own problems. Very interesting reading yesterday that Le Pen, one of the views is that Le Pen, although she would be technically ineligible to stand, would appeal to the Constitutional Council, and that would kind of set up another kind of political crisis on to go on at the same time if there were a dissolution. And as Clovis also said, and a lot of commentators have made the point, that really what the far right and the far left are trying to do is to force Macron to stand down, and that seems very unlikely. But at this moment in time, a dissolution does not seem to be an absolute certainty. But then we didn't think it was back in June of 2024. So, anything could happen.
Emmanuel Macron tries to project strength on the world stage when we think of him co-chairing the coalition of the willing meetings for Ukraine, for instance, alongside Keir Starmer. If his government loses this vote, like it's poised to do, and he's further weakened domestically, won't that carefully crafted image he has on the world stage take a beating?
I don't think so. I think that, well, Yes and no. I think that it's much more subtle than that. I mean, there is a tendency to see these things in quite a sort of Cartesian, quite sort of black and white. It's important to understand that the Constitution of the Fifth Republic actually allows the president to stand back, to appoint a prime minister who then takes responsibility for the day-to-day running, as Bayrou has done, as Barnier did, and as various other presidents have done in the past. The problem is that there's a very conflated way of reading the Constitution, of seeing prime minister and president as the same person or as being part of the same kind of identity, which they're technically not. So, and I think that seen from the international perspective, I think that Keir Starmer and everybody else will say, okay, he has problems domestically, but the president, the French president, still, in fact, almost the only thing that's left of the French president in this situation is their standing as an international leader. And I don't think that that will be seriously undermined at this point.
I have to ask about Wednesday because, of course, there have been calls for this country to be blocked. Bloquons tout is being called. Do you think we could potentially have another yellow vest movement erupting here in France?
It's quite nuanced, isn't it? The Yellow Vest movement was very much detached from political organizations, detached from the trade unions, detached from political parties, and its origins, the Block Everything movement on Wednesday, kind of comes from the same place initially as the Yellow Vest, very much an online citizens movement, but it's been appropriated by the left-wing parties. It's been appropriated by trade unions. And that's very different in the sense that if you have trade unions or parties involved, then you have interlocutors. You have people that the government can talk to. And that's quite traditional in a sense, and that's very different. So it'll be interesting to see just how much, just what the take-up is on Wednesday.
We'll see what happens. Boltzmann, thank you for joining us on the program. Appreciate it. Now, we will be bringing you special coverage of that confidence motion in the National Assembly on France 24. That's starting from 3 p.m. Paris time, 1 p.m. GMT.